Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining today to the second, annual virtual conference for Retail Innovation Week with PSFK. I'm here today to talk to you a bit about the new consumer behaviors that will reshape the physical store. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. So the new behaviors that will reshape physical stores. So before that, just want to be sure to introduce who we are for anybody in the audience who's new to us. We are the Lionesque Group. We are experiential retail strategists and pop-up architects. We have produced over 150 brick and mortar experiences across the country, really dedicating ourselves and creating immersive experiences that drive ROI and help our clients tell compelling stories. Earlier this year in January, we did merge with the global architecture firm MG2. So that really allowed us to extend our footprint and really dive into combined expertise in experiential design, operational strategy, architecture, and really provide a holistic end-to-end design practice from ideation all the way to build out. So I'd like to give that background so you understand our lens and our scope and the way in which we intersect with our clients. So now we're going to take a look at the new behaviors. And these are behaviors we've been talking about throughout this year, but we're going to look at how they've continued to accelerate and the impact that is having as we think of store design in the future. So the trends that have continued to accelerate are BOPUS. And when I talk about BOPUS, I talk about the holistic aspect of that whole experience, everything from buy online, pick up in store, buy online, ship to store, buy online, return in store. So the holistic aspect of that, curbside pickup, contactless payments, and the openness to shopping new categories online. In our first iteration of this conference, we talked about a lot of these, and we started to show the growth of it that was happening as soon as stores closed in March. But now we're seeing that those trends are continuing to accelerate. And some of the numbers that we look at that have come to fruition over the past quarter, the number of orders placed online and pick up at stores by customers surged 208% between April 1st and April 20th, compared to a year ago. For those that you saw Target earnings, Target's Q1 2020 same-day services increased by 278%. Drive-up units were higher in Q1 than all of 2019. And of the millions of guests who use drive-up, 40% of those were new to the service. So what we're seeing is the current conditions that we're in, the necessity of things is really driving innovation, and it's driving the consumer's appetite to try things at least once. And if it's a great experience, they're going to probably continue to use it. So as we talk through how we think of store environments to better serve that, you'll see why it's important. MasterCard Giant saw a 40% jump in contactless payments, including tap to pay and mobile pay during the first quarter as the pandemic worsened. And as of April 5th, Walmart grocery app saw 460% growth in average daily downloads in comparison to January, indicating a surge in new customers to Walmart grocery who may have never placed an order before. So we look at things and we say, okay, well, how has that progressed? The big question is what's going to normalize as stores open and as they continue to stay open. What we mean is that a lot of these trends have continued to stay strong. For the entire period of March 16th all the way through June 11th, BOPUS orders rose over 350%, topping 2 million orders picked up from stores, as been surveyed by 260 clients by Corbo. And 63% of US shoppers bought goods online that haven't previously considered those online purchase, and 75% for millennial shoppers. So we're seeing this continue to stay strong even as stores begin to open. And we're not saying that physical retail won't serve the purpose it did in the past, but it's definitely going to modulate, and it needs to become a place that serves multiple purposes, both from fulfillment side and from the experiential side. And the other fact is this is really across generations and demographics. So as much as we highlight millennial shoppers here, what I will say is you're seeing adoption of this everything from Gen Z to millennial, Gen X, and baby boomers. So we're really going to need to think about that as we think of the integration and technology across channels. So retailers can plan and adapt for trends and consumer behaviors by considering a number of things as they start to look at store design. There's the modularity in store design, including fixtures and store format, And then there's that seamless integration of technology providing convenience for customers. So integration of technologies, consumers are likely to gravitate towards retailers that create convenient experiences. So we talk about contactless payments, we talk about digital shelves become more widely adopted, and we talk about mobile enabled shopping experiences playing a bigger role. For sure, it's going to range, right, from what the retailer does and is able to provide. You've seen great examples of what Nike's done in that kind of self checkout enabled experience through their app, and you see a lot of this curbside pickup. But whether it's low tech or high tech, what we really need to know is that consumers are going to want to be able to interact in a fluid way. So as we think of the integration of that within the store, we have to rethink what that customer journey is going to look like. And the importance of omni-channel with flexible store formats. So we've talked about omni-channel forever. Really, we're talking about unified commerce now. Individual locations will need to duly serve as both places of discovery and fulfillment centers. If we look at Target, 80% of Target's Q1 e-commerce sales were filled from stores, and that continued to Q1 2020 e-commerce sales were fulfilled from stores, and fulfilling orders this way costs 45% less than traditional warehousing delivery. So I apologize on this slide, it should say 2020. But the other thing that's important is necessity driving innovation. It's decreasing that timeline to market. So while as retailers and brands thought this is my roadmap for the next 4 years, they're putting those things into fruition now. That's step one, and consumers are using it, right? So there's validation in that. Step two. Step three, though, is it's impacting the bottom line in a positive way. If they're able to fulfill orders less, Target was able to do that 45% less than the traditional warehousing delivery, and in-store pickup services were helping the bottom line. So those are all validations, and this is going to continue to be integrated into the store. The humanization of technological experiences is also aiding experiential design. So a question I get often is also, what's going to happen to experiential design? Is that dead because we are in a no-touch world? And the answer is no, but we're going to have to rethink it. So as we think of technology, there's that powers the backbone and the efficiencies around things like curbside and BOPIS, but there's also that powers the brand experience and that experiential moments. Virtual assistants are becoming more common in store aisles. You can walk into the store, whether you pre-booked an appointment or not, and you have an opportunity to speak to someone in a no-touch way that is well educated, this robot, Pepper, and can answer your questions. And you're also seeing voice being more integrated into store environments as well. The integration of AR and VR is nothing new, but you're seeing that come to fruition more as well. Certain categories, it's resonating more than others, but it's starting to get looked at in a more wider lens. Beauty and home, for example, are great examples of augmented reality. And if you think about it with the blended approach of curated merchandising and technology integration, we think about how do we reimagine the store, right? We steer away from fully merchandised environments, and we look into, okay, how do we create the store as a vehicle for testing, for product education, a spotlight for best sellers, new product launches, or unique collaborations. So if I think of beauty, for example, let's imagine that you're approaching an end cap and it's equipped now with AR mirrors where you can virtually play, right? And customers can experiment as they please in a low touch way. Maybe at the central core, there are QR codes that allow customers to gain remote control via their mobile device so they can browse new categories and products. We can't underestimate how much a person's phone is really becoming their remote control to choose their own adventure in store. And how do we leverage that, right? We also can think of kinetically responsive technology. And I think in the past, we strayed away from that because of cost. But if you think about it, that's a great way to have a customer come in, and it enables no touch exploration around product details, around brand story, around a guided survey. And those are low tech integrations that you can lean into. When you think of QR codes, for example, customers can also take it a step further and interact. They can unlock a video content, they can place an order. And what's great is, as we're seeing more and more adoption of it, it's also helping us more and more uncover customer intent, customer purchase intent, right? So now we're learning more and more as well about what customers are doing when they come in the store, exactly what products are they interacting with, what are they trying to learn more information about. And it's really creating and illuminating a way for us to better understand who's in store. So, what we believe is that we will see stores adapt to a more technologically advanced consumer base. Stores will need to seamlessly be able to serve numerous customer journeys. So, what does that mean? That means that we really need to think about modularity in store design. So, I'm going to touch upon a couple of ways in which we need to do that. First is the cash wrap. How do we rethink the cash wrap? Pre-COVID, there was a lot of friction around the adaptability of contactless payments, right? And Apple and Samsung Pay was just coming, but you didn't see a wide adoption of that here in the US. But as consumers look to the future, they're all but demanding limited contact interaction at checkout. They're pushing for this adoption. They're accepting NFC and RFID and QR codes, right? And so the desire for self checkout begins to eclipse a bit more of that traditional full service checkout that we see. And so how do we create environments that can modulate for that, right? We need to be flexible for those who are doing self-serve and those that are needing assisted checkout. And there's extremes to it, right? There's the Apple Store version where a store associate should be able to check out a consumer wherever they're standing. There's the Nike aspect where a consumer can check themselves out wherever they're standing. And then there'll still be those needs where we need a full service checkout experience. So how do we think through that adoption and that modularity? With a cash wrap will need to be less clunky. It'll need to be a singular moment with store employees in a store, rather be less of a singular moment and more malleable and fluid to be able to serve the customer where it's most convenient to them at the exact time of their purchase intent. And of course, we can't forget about considerations in design for hygienic money handling. Another area we're really looking at is flexible storefronts. So the storefront is always going to be a point of storytelling, and that's not going to go away, right? It's a three-dimensional moment where you can immerse somebody. But that's going to become important more and more as we continue to see curbside adoption, as we're seeing people need queue areas as they're waiting to be served, and just as the purpose of stores continues to flex and modulate. So display windows are going to evolve in their purpose. They're going to require the ability to become, at sometimes, a point of visual display and storytelling, and at sometimes a point of purchase or pickup. During the week, for example, when traffic is lighter, having fully merchandised windows and displays with a QR code might be the most impactful. However, during higher traffic and weekend hours or days, the checkout or the pickup moment may take precedence as the window's focal point. So how do we have it flex from that? How do we have it efficiently serve as a curbside moment? How do we have it shift from visual to shoppable storefronts? And have it be a point that can easily have the ability to monetize, right, those storefront windows in a scalable way. So the storefront window and the modularity of that is definitely going to be a big place that we think about as we rethink design and the flexibility of that. Then we have the scalable floor plan. So, as we think of floor plans, we're thinking of things like the allocation of front of house and back of house. And that's an important point because as the store flexes from how it's going to, the purposes that it's going to serve, sometimes we need it to be 25% back of house and 75% front of house. And sometimes we need it to be 50-50. And sometimes we need it to be the complete opposite, where it's a much smaller footprint front of house and a much larger footprint back of house, so that it can efficiently serve as that point of fulfillment, right? And if we think about it throughout the year, there's obviously going to be ways that it flexes in that there's going to be more orders online for pickup, for example, maybe because there's a new product drop, maybe because it's the holidays and the seasonality of things. So store walls are kind of become these larger than life points of contactless exploration and education sometimes, but they also need to be able to flex so that we can be able to efficiently fulfill orders as they evolve throughout the year. So the other thing is the operational protocols, right? So if we think about that, there's a lot that we need to think about as we think about how a space modulates from pickup of orders, return of orders, events in the space. So again, really, we're going to have to do a lot more of that scenario analysis so that we can think about how do we create this environment that fulfills multiple purposes throughout the year and can efficiently morph for that. Another area as we think through the modularity in store design is the package journey. So again, this creative modularity allows for flexibility in stations for product intake, optimizing package dwell time. And we need to think of things like how long a package sits on the floor. So often, the number one thing we think about when we plan for a store environment is what is the customer journey? But in today's world, we can't think of the customer journey without thinking of the package journey. The package journey is determining so many things about a customer's experience. So how do we create an environment where we can easily rearrange and use valuable floor space to more efficiently process, pack, and unpack and reallocate merchandise? So I said earlier in this conversation about the growth of BOPIS, but it's not just buy online, pick up in store. Again, it's buy online, pick up in store. It's buy online, ship from store. It's buy online, return in store, right? So there's a lot of scenario analysis to do as we're thinking through that journey. And we know that if that is done well, then we are checking the box and saying, okay, we created a great customer experience. There's a discovery element of great customer experience, but then there's like those quick service metrics that enable a great customer experience. So if we think about that efficiency, right, then we have to plan, we have to have a logistical lens on as much as we have that experiential design lens on. We also know that when customers have a very positive experience with, for example, returning a product, they're more likely to then reinvest those dollars on the spot and shop and put that money back to the brand if they just had a seamless experience. And that helps encourage repeat purchases, right? So how do we create an environment that does that? We want to think about allowing for the expansion and abridgment of processing stations for product intake, for optimizing dwell time. We want to think about how do we rearrange and use valuable floor space when, for example, we don't have as many pickups. Maybe we want to use that moment for a pop-in shop. Maybe we want to use that for another spotlight. Maybe we want to just have a waiting space there. We also want to think about creating dedicated spaces for effective queue management, package tracking, and how do we rethink of the staff and how we're going to integrate through that. So there's a lot of things to think through now, and it's a bit more complex as we think about store design, as we think about all of these areas in which consumers are adopting technology and really having this fluid online, offline interaction with the brand, this self-guided experience that's also supported by a brand, and how we create an environment that, again, is a mix between quick service metrics done well, right? But also this experiential moment of discovery. And when we do that well, and we think about not just the customer journey, but we think of the package journey as well, then we're going to have better customer service. We're going to optimize flow. We're going to have happier customers. We're going to unlock brand loyalty. So, with consumers increasingly adopting technologies that enable self-guided exploration and checkout, brands will need to deliver on quick service metrics as much as they do in customer service. And I hope that you all will start taking a holistic view on what that means from the outside in, the curb, the storefront window, the interior merchandising strategy, and the checkout experience. Thank you. And for those who want, we can talk a little retail. All right, I think we have some questions here, which is great. Let me look through here. First question that we have here, in what ways will customers want to re-embrace touch? Will there be a backlash on touchless innovations post-pandemic? I don't think so. So my answer is there's definitely going to be a normalization between really being reliant on contactless and then wanting to have that human connection again. I don't think that we have a concrete answer to what that's going to be in the next month or 2 months. I think it's going to be a lot of evolution over the next few months. The longer that the pandemic lasts, obviously, the more of the impact it's going to have on our expectations in the future. But that's why we really want to create these modular environments. And there's a lot of opportunities to create immersive experiences, experiential moments without necessarily relying on touch, but in igniting the other senses. So it still feels human. I think at the end of the day, it's not 100% just about the tactile. I mean, there's certain elements that need it for sure, but it's about layering the human side of retail. If we lean into the safety measures too much, it becomes a clinical experience. And then a consumer walks away feeling, you know what? Did I really need to go there? Maybe I can just do this myself or shop online in the future. So it's really about finding those human moments for now. Is there a little message you can put in somebody's package? Is there color that you can add to the environment that really evokes emotion? What can you do with sound? What can you do with scent? So it's really thinking those ways. And then if you can integrate stuff like virtual assistants in store as well, I think that you can help bridge that gap in the short term. I think we have another question coming in here. I think the biggest question that I seem to see as a trend here is really thinking about, how we do all of these things. And that's why creating flexible environments is going to be so important, right? We've seen the stats grow. We've seen that contactless payment has grown. We've seen that curbside has grown. We've seen as stores open, it's starting to come in a little bit because people do prefer brick and mortar overall, especially in certain categories, but it's still too soon, right? And so if we think about it, we really need to create flexible environments so it allows us to iterate and test in the moment and learn and be responsive in that way. So the term we're really using as we think of 2020 and 21 and beyond is creating agile, responsive retail environments. And that's what's going to let us be able to answer some of the questions that are being asked here about are we going to go too far? Are we going to be able to meet consumers' expectations, not just today, but also tomorrow? And so if we create these environments that are able to flex around these important key moments, then we can always be listening and iterating. And the other great part is as consumers are adopting this technology, we're always learning, right? So being able to digest that information and say, okay, the average time at cash wrap is less than it used to be, or the average person needs to check out on their own, or the average person is okay interacting with our storefront window, then we can make some determinations that way. The question is, do you think stores will be embracing smaller footprints as they shift, in inventory needs? So I do think you're going to see more small formats coming for sure. I think you're going to see a whole mix of things. So I think in key markets, you're going to see those flagship destinations, but depending on the scale of the brand or retailer, right? So if we go to more of that mass retailer, what I would say is they're reevaluating the footprint, right? And they're thinking of capital expenditures across the map, and they're looking at what the purpose of each physical location serves. And there's no cookie cutter answer to that, right? So in certain markets, it's going to make sense to have a bigger footprint. It's going to make sense to be there 12 months of the year. And the store is going to need to flex for certain things. But in other cities, it might not make sense to show up 12 months of the year. It might make sense to show up at key times during the year, new product launches, new collaboration announcements, holidays. And so for that, pop-up retail might make sense. And then not in every market are we going to need full inventory. I think as you see Nordstrom, that's a perfect example of they have flagship locations and they have local locations, which is really a services hub and a point of fulfillment. So it's really taking a holistic look at your physical portfolio and thinking, how do we serve each one of these markets? And if you think about that at a lens and being customer centric, what you need to deliver, that will inform what that store format and that footprint needs to look like. The next question is how do pop-ups play in this transitional time as part of it? So I think I answered that a little bit, but what we really love about the opportunities of pop-up retail is A, it lets you show up when you need to, right? And you don't need to be in all markets 12 months of the year. Some markets you just need to be for special occasions. But also having pop-up allows you to test. It allows you to test what works and what doesn't work. It allows you to do A/B analysis on different layouts, merchandising strategies. How does it flex from a point of fulfillment to a point of building brand awareness? How does it flex for a point of community space? And so and play with the fixtures, right? And how they need to modulate. So there's a lot that pop-up can serve in the new norm as we're seeing it. Next question is, can you talk a little bit about the staff journey? Many retailers are facing having to restrain and hire new workers to adapt to shift changes as they are also experiencing contraction. Staffing is definitely a tricky thing. What we've seen be really successful for a number of our clients is repurposing staff. So a lot of the in-store staff, whether it's pop-up, retail, or permanent, they're at the front lines. They're talking to customers in store on a daily basis. They're probably the most informed when it comes to the FAQs, right? Those frequently asked questions. So repurposing those staff to be at the call centers, to be a beauty advisor, to be an online stylist, really think about their knowledge base, right? And all of that. And they can translate that human connection online. And that's been really successful for a number of brands that we've seen across categories. So I think there's a lot of flexibility within that. And it also reinforces the importance of how you train your staff, right? How do you really train them to be able to interact across multiple touch points, right? And be able to be flexible enough to be able to serve your customers, whether they're dealing with them in an online or an offline environment. So I think that might be the questions that we've received thus far. So hopefully that was insightful for everybody. Again, we're in a changing time. It's a quick evolving time, and we've never had to be able to think on our feet as much as we have. And 2020 is probably going to be marked with a lot of, learning on the fly and really just being adaptable. But at some point, we do need to really plan for 2021 and beyond. And the purpose of the store is going to be different. And those who are successful are going to be those who truly understand that the physical retail experience doesn't just serve one purpose. It is a point of discovery. It is a point of fulfillment. It is a point of community. It is a point of education. And it really needs to be able to seamlessly flex for all of those scenarios. Thanks so much for joining today. I don't know, Piers, if you're coming back on.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I was just flexing.
Great. Perfect.
Thank you so much for that that final kind of wrap, and kind of a reminder that we need to focus, we need to be optimistic, and we need to think about the future whilst we deal about today. So as always, it's always such an insightful talk, and it's so great to have you back on our stage. And thank you so much, Melissa Gonzalez of Lionesque Group. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.